Hey YouTube, it's me again. A lot of people keep talking about how important territory is in Ukraine and Russia and all that. And I don't really think it's about territory. In my last video, I talked about how it's about resources and how important that is. Territory can come and go. And I want to reiterate that with what we're seeing in Israel. So here is a fun little map that I drew up. As you can see, this is Israel, or use the P word if you like. Here we have the Gaza Strip, West Bank, and the Golan Heights. Down here is the Sinai Peninsula, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. So, as you may have known if you've been paying attention for the last week or so, folks in Gaza, right here, have basically done a massive attack. A lot of people don't know this, but since Yasser Arafat's death in 2004, the last election, after that, Hamas has been winning pretty consistent, and they really have kind of suspended elections because their support is so overwhelming. Before Yasser Arafat died, the PLO was the main party in charge. Once he died, a lot of his support defected to Hamas, and basically they've been the majority holders of the public opinion of the Palestinian folks. And so they've kind of been in charge for quite some time. Now, a lot of people are kind of wondering, okay, well, what's with this unprovoked attack? A lot of people like to say things like unprovoked, like Russia was completely unprovoked entering this civil war that's been raging on for 8 years, where Russians have been tortured. Russian Ukrainians have been tortured, and basically the EU had to make the Ukrainians sign a peace treaty and a ceasefire to quit committing atrocities against its own citizens in the civil war. Um, and so, why did Russia, unprovoked, just join this war or start a war rather? And from the Palestinian perspective, they think the war continues on. They are not getting what they expected. They expected three very large provinces, but with multiple wars stemming back from 48, Israel continues to defeat its enemies and expand its territory. These three locations used to be very, very large in the two-party solution idea. Now, we're to a point where the two-party solution, the two-state solution, does not exist anymore. And I don't support it for one specific reason. And if you were paying attention to my last video, there's a little thing I talked to you about called an economic exclusive zone, an EEZ. Again, what is that? Basically, when you have international waters out here, any sovereign nation owns 5 miles off the coast. It's theirs to do with whatever they please. All right, now, without a Palestinian authority or a recognized state, all of this waterway belongs to Israel. All of this waterway right here over the Sinai belongs to Egypt. Makes sense, right? If you were to recognize Palestinian statehood, this would give Gaza a way to the ocean, a free pass where they could get any type of economic trade whatsoever. Which, oh, yeah, when goods don't cross borders, wars do. Well, in this case, with the stated position of Palestinians, war is going to cross borders. Being able to have their own entry into international commerce, you bet your ass they would be getting a lot of missiles and artillery and everything else. So right now, Israel, they tend to blockade this area, and they monitor anything going in and out. It's their way of reducing any weapons, rockets that Gaza might get, because Hamas is a terrorist organization. Don't mince words about it. They are. And so a two-state solution right now, with the type of Palestinians that exist, there will be no peace. And that is the main reason why. Because they would get access to trade weapons and have it freely, and no one could stop them. Israel couldn't go out, 5.1 miles and blockade it. They would be they'd be violating international law. And so that's why a two-state solution would not work at this point. It's entirely upon the Palestinians to make peace. And I think, let's be honest, I'm no friend of Israel. Yeah, that's going to get a strike, I bet. But they have been willing to make peace with their neighbors. And if you need any evidence of that, check this out. This is the Sinai Peninsula. A lot of folks recognize this as part of Egypt. And it was up until, what, about 1967, I think it was? 64, sorry. It was the Six-Day War. Basically, a coalition of Arab nations, in conjoint with the Palestinians, launched a massive attack on Israel and almost defeated Israel. But Israel got their stuff together, they scrambled, and they started knocking everybody back. And in fact, they took the entire Sinai Peninsula away from Egypt. Now, it wasn't until the 70s, I think 72, did they cede this little sliver back. And then later in the 70s, and I think 82, they gave this final sliver back to Egypt. These were staged withdrawals with Egypt if they remain peaceful. And here's the thing. If war is always about territory, why cede this territory back in a peaceful manner? If the empire of the Zionists continue to expand, why cede any lands back to Egypt? They weren't going to be threatened by Egypt. Egypt was not going to defeat them in a land war, but they were willing to negotiate and to get peace back to their traditional boundary. So people are saying, okay, well, why don't they just cede more land back to the Palestinians, and maybe the Palestinians will create some sort of peaceful arrangement? We know that's not going to happen. The Palestinians have not wanted to negotiate in good faith. Any land ceded to them, they would definitely turn it to be a military operation, whatever. It's just been really bad whenever you see that. And so I think it's really important to recognize that also Egypt is a sovereign state. Israel and the rest of the world does not really recognize the Palestinian pockets as a functioning government, a functioning state that has all of the seats at the table. And I know this is a very big drawing, but Israel itself is what, about the size of New Jersey? So these are just, they're neighborhoods. And we like to say, oh yeah, no, they're going to be a state. No, they're not. They're more or less subjects at this point, subjects of Israel. Israel does have a way of providing citizenship to people who are peaceful, but card-carrying Hamas members, they're not interested in peace. So let's just reiterate. Wars are not always fought for territory. Territory can be won, territory can be lost. And speaking of losing territory, that's why we have Israel to begin with. The Ottoman Empire got in a war, they FAFO'd, and they lost World War I. And guess who won this part in the treaty? Great Britain. And you know what? To the victor goes the spoils. And what did Great Britain decide to do with it? Whatever they want to. That's how wars work. When you win and you win land, you get to do with it whatever you please. So a lot of people who are, wah, Palestine, free Palestine. You lost the war, and if you want it back, you're going to have to win a war. And I think that's what's happening right now. But I think you're going to find out that Israel is far more capable of doing a lot of damage to the future Palestinian population. You know, sometimes you got to think about what a population is going to look like in, say 2030. Zelensky and Kiev aren't really thinking about what Ukraine's going to look like in 20, 30, 40 years. Their population collapse has been awful. Say, oh, well, Slava Ukraini, whatever, do whatever it takes. But you got to think a little bit beyond yourself a little bit. And I don't think anyone's doing that, especially not the Palestinians. They're going to lose 10-1 for every Israeli they kill. And what's the point? It's so that they can show that they have fight. It's so that they show that they are fighting for the Holy Land. Now, to get even more complicated with this, you have MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He has been talking with Iran and he has decided to publicly support the Palestinian cause in this conflict. And anyone who's paying attention to geopolitics knows that this is kind of a moment to step back and say, hey, what's going on here? America is trying to cure the rift between Saudi Arabia and America. And now that we see the Crown Prince audibly supporting the Palestinian cause, I don't know how that's going to play out, but it's not going to be good. If Saudi Arabia continues to, they could have taken a neutral stance, but they didn't. If they continue to go down that path, I think you're going to see Saudi Arabia become more and more warm to the BRICS nations. And if it's even possible, if you start seeing an Asian coalition of nations, so BRICS is obviously Brazil, Russia. Brazil isn't; it's South America. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I get that right? Yeah. If you start seeing that type of coalition where the major powers of Asia and Asia Minor and the Far East are all combined together and working, I mentioned India, I hope. If they're all working together and cooperating, that's a geopolitical shift that is not good for anyone else. They would be smart to do it. The American policy has been keep everybody at everyone else's throats so that they can't ally. But if China, Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, and the BRICS plus Africa and everyone else start getting together, we're going to see a bit of a change in geopolitics. And so what's it going to look like in, I don't know, 2100? Anyone thinking about that? Eastern people are. That's how they think. They think into the future. We don't. We think, what's going to happen next election. And so this is just a little primer of wars are not always about territory. Territory is a fun thing, but inevitably it's all about the long game. And I think Israel, they haven't quite invaded the Gaza Strip yet because they're thinking about the long-term implications of what that's going to look like. So anyways, have a good day. It's been fun. If you found this to be informative, like me. If you think I'm full of it, put it in the comments. I'm sure there's a lot of people who think this is incorrect. But anyways, have a good one.